This week we are answering questions on cantering. So if you've got any questions in your head about how cantering might work on different types of horses, we're going to ask Mark about standard breds, a horse that stops when it's asked to trot or canter, flying changes, and how to get that nice easy lope. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley, and with me is Mark Langley. Mark, let's start with the question on how you can train a standard bred to canter.
Okay, so now standard bred, I probably should have got some more clarification on this one, but I don't know what it's like in other countries, but in Australia, more common standard breds are bred for pacing, not trotting. So you might have 1 out of 7 or 8. I don't know, the people in the industry will know better. But you know, at the night trots, whatever, you'll have 1 trotting and the rest will be pacing. So there's less trotters than there are pacers in Australia. So we'll treat it as a pacer, but also a trotter. You'll still get the same out of it. So in either situation, the canter is a weird gait that it doesn't naturally do. No, naturally does. So basically what happens, I've been told that the more, if a standard bred is naturally or has some natural gaitedness in it, as in a more of a gaited horse, it's going to go better in pacing and possibly win more money. But basically pacing is taught through like a hobbling process where the horse is restricted in movement, so it has to move in that sort of the 2-beat rhythm that is not a diagonal rhythm, but one side moves and then the other side moves. So it's almost like it's running on 2 legs, but the 4 legs are going boom, boom, boom like that. 1, 2, 1, 2. And same with the trotters, the trotters that just do the trot, they're taught not to gallop. So they're basically, you can't go into a canter or gallop because you get disqualified. So basically, they've had their whole life being taught not to gallop and not to break gait. So whether they've been mechanically trained to pace or they're trotters, they still are designed to go super fast in that gait and hold it and not go any faster. Whereas most horses, if they wouldn't go that fast in a trot, they'd be in a canter or a gallop. Yep. So basically and if you watch a trotter out in the paddock, after a while it gets loose, they'll start to, maybe without humans around, pacers go back to trotting around, and you'll see them have a gallop with some horses and stuff, and they'll start to kind of go back to being a horse and not worry so much. But as soon as they get in work mode, they go, oh, that's right, I'm not allowed to do that. So the things you got to remember it in the industry, that high octane, especially restricted pacing, where they've been restricted so they pace, there's a lot of stress in it. So the softer your horse and the more they understand you and your education, the more likely they are to go back to a natural I can canter. But if they get wound up first and you wind them up in a certain way, they'll and they just won't canter. So that's one thing. And that's one of the hardest things, is every time you bring them up a little bit in their speed, that worry comes up, and then all of a sudden they go mechanical. So how well they come up in their speed is really essential. The other thing is, if you look at the pacing and the trotting in the cart, they're very stiff and very rigid, and it's like a train going down a train track. So the first thing I would teach a lot of those horses before I think about trotting and cantering is how to turn really well, how to back up again, back up softly, back up in the reins, do tight turns where they're circling and they've got to bend nice. They're thinking into the rein, they're turning softly, bendy, nice and bendy. Okay, so the paces, if you've done a lot of nice loose walking and bending and they're loose, then when you ask them to go a bit faster, the chance of them finding a trot is higher. It can get higher the more softer they are at following the rein, bending and balancing. So nice indirect rein, hindquarter yields, lead the front end over, turn them into a basic working horse that'll walk. Take that memory of I'm on the track out of them through good slow body control, and then they'll get loose, and instead of the reins being a trap that holds them while they run and pace, they'll start to follow the reins and see them in a different light. And when you can get that rigidity and stiffness out of them, the chance of finding a soft trot is a lot higher. And then that also goes for the canter. The thing about it, I believe, if it was a pacer, you have to get the horse to find a soft trot and just go, I don't have to pace, before you're going to find a canter, because that's going to put them back in their natural, I'm just trotting like a horse mindset, not I'm pacing like a robot on the track. So if you can get them loose and soft and bendy and just following a feel really nice and backing up nice, and teach them. And then what I do is I teach them to speed up in the walk softly, slow down. and get used to acceleration means you can accelerate with feel, not just go accelerate, 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 like, you know, the Daleks in Doctor Who, exterminate. Accelerate softly, come back, and then accelerate softly till they're thinking about like just breaking gait and they feel good at it. Because a lot of horses have been taught to pace. When they go to the trot, they worry and go, I'm not allowed to trot pace. And they'll just have a balk and then they'll hit the pace. Whereas if you get them really soft and saying, I don't care, slow them down again, then they get better at finding that trot. And then at the trot, you start to do what I was talking about, the walk, get them soft, circling, all that sort of stuff, you know, circling around, and just slow down and speed up, and slow down and speed up in the trot. Slow down, speed up until you can speed them up a little bit better and a bit better. And then all of a sudden you might put enough leg on them that they kind of want to push out. They might just push out. So they have to have like a good push accelerator where you can push and they push out, and then you might just break that seal and get the canter.
Does it take very long for them to do it?
Oh yeah. Well, some paces and trotters, it'll take you a month to get them soft in the reins. You know, it might take, you know, if you're doing it all the time and you were using reinsmanship on paces all the time, you might have a few hacks and techniques that get them softer quicker. But just people who get horses off the track, you know, if it takes you, like say, it takes me, you know, I've got these horses here to start for 5 weeks at the moment as we're doing this podcast. And yeah, I've got them backing up and following a rein and stuff like that. But I'm trying to get them to understand those things correctly. So once upon a time, I might have had them doing more things. Now I'm trying to do the basics better, so they understand the basics better. And if that takes me 5 weeks to get on a young horse and get it to understand basics, then you've got a horse that's been trained for months and months and months and years to do this particular discipline. Well, that's a lot of memory in there. So to get them very soft in the reins and stuff could take someone a fair while. And I think people think, oh, I want to walk, trot and canter, but your horse still stiffens up like this and operates like that. It's always going to go back to what it's been taught. But if it's operating completely differently in the reins, you've completely changed its mindset, so it doesn't think it's at the track. So you've got more chance. But you've got to go back to a good foundation in everything, the reins, the legs. Sounds
good. Next question from Yoke, I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right, who is over in Europe, in the Netherlands. He would like to thank you, Mark, for your podcast. He always listens to them when he's commuting to work. He enjoys watching all the membership videos and he's learning a lot from them. That's great to hear. Thank you so much. We love to hear the comments and feedback coming through from all of you. He has a question about his little Connemara pony who's almost 8 years old. He bought him originally for his daughter, but he's realised that perhaps isn't quite the right temperament for a child. Now, he's got various issues going on with this particular horse, which we will probably come to, but the first one is that when he's under saddle, he will stop if he's asked to trot or canter, and it's worse when you're trying to steer him. He locks and he blocks with his shoulders. So is this something, can you just explain, Mark, what might be happening with this particular pony, why he might be stopping and when he's asked to trot or canter? So apart from pain problems and all that sort of thing, which you get your horses checked for, but when do people use legs? Think about that, like, and ponies, you know, they've been maybe kids' ponies or something. So you're wanting to use the legs to accelerate, so you want it to get a trot and the horse is sucking back to the legs. But just think about this for a second. I want everyone to think about this as a learning horse that has a desire to be at home or somewhere else or scared of what's ahead of it. The most common time people are going to use its legs is when the horse doesn't want to go forward, because that's the time when the horse slows down. So we use our legs or our stick, whatever. And the only time a lot of horses get legs and stick is when they want to slow down. So we're always using our legs or our impulsion aid when the horse is not wanting to go forward, either it be being too scared to go forward because of the environment's too scary, or all the other horses are doing something, or it just doesn't understand the legs, okay? But either way, most people use their legs when the horse slows down, and most horses slow down because they're wanting to slow down for various nervous reasons. So if we're always using our legs when the horse is wanting to slow down, well, we're using our legs not when the horse is wanting to go faster, which means it's always an argument, until eventually when we squeeze our legs, there's such a big no, the horse goes, no, I don't like legs, because that's the principle. So legs are an accelerator, not a pusher. And if I could teach everyone around the world to use their legs as an accelerator, not a pusher, we wouldn't have horses that suck back and tighten up
all the time. So in order to get a soft horse to respond to legs, the horse has to be going forward before you teach to accelerate. But most people, remember what I said, use their legs when the horse is slowing down. So when the horse is going backward, that's when we use our legs, because that's when we think we have to use them because they're slowing down. We have to get our horses forward before we teach them to go forward to legs. That's like it's a riddle. It's not really a riddle. I think people have butchered the reins over years. So what they've done in the reins is done too much flexion, not enough search and desire in the reins, not enough balance in the reins. So they've lost their forward through the reins. They've lost their let go of hard thoughts through the reins. They've lost their desire through the reins. So then they're just left with these legs that just push the horse like a wheelbarrow. That's the problem. The problem with most modern day riding is the reins have been butchered and now the legs have been butchered because of it. So the first thing you've got to do is get your horse to go forward. So one rein starts a gold. If the horse has a hard thought, take a rein until it follows the rein in a tight circle, whatever, and let him out until you've got a perpetual motion through the reins. What perpetual motion is in the reins is when you pick up a rope or a rein and the rein is moving, the horse is following it, consistently following it until they're in a state of flow. When they're in a state of flow, you let them out and they're walking forward. If they suck back like this, don't kick. Use that rein and say, try a new direction, try something different. Until your horse is walking around an arena, flicking its ears, going forward and not going, I need to stop, I need to stop, I need to stop. Then pick a good direction that your horse is feeling nice and free and squeeze it. And you might find the horse goes, yeah, I can trot.
So you sort of wait for them to put their ears forward and go, yep, now I can use my legs.
Yeah, you
got that.
You wait till you got the forward thought and then you say, can you go faster with that forward thought? Because they're already forward. But so your pony's only showing the symptoms of thousands of other horses that I've worked that have been trained in the same way. You must go through that gate, you must go over that jump, you must go into that scary zombie apocalypse. And eventually the horse goes, legs mean they're pushing me somewhere I don't want to go. So when you want transition later, they just get angry at the legs and suck back.
Yeah, so there's actually light at the end of the tunnel, yeah, because this little pony, if you can train it in the right way, could be a cracker of a horse for your daughter. So that, like what you were just saying, speaks to me that you was, instead of looking at what it's doing, what its body's doing, i.e. it's trotting or it's not trotting or it's cantering or it's not cantering, you need to be looking at how is it feeling.
How's it feeling and where's its thoughts? And a lot of horses get ridden around with their thoughts still back at the stable or the yards or the paddock, and then they just kick all the time. Like I've seen people go around an arena, and this is not doing fancy stuff. They've used the legs 40 times just to do a lap of an arena. And I say to them, next time you do a lap of that arena, and I nearly feel like putting the microphone on them so they're on the loudspeaker. I say, every time you squeeze your horse, I want you to say loudly, change. And you see them think about their legs then. So you imagine them going around the arena, change, 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 squeezing that horse around the arena. And then, and when they come back to me, I'll say, how many changes did your horse make to those legs? Or were you carrying your horse? That's not the Flintstones. I don't know if you guys watch the Flintstones in Europe, but the Flintstones is an American cartoon where they've got all these like cars and stuff, but they patter their feet on the floor to go anywhere. So I say to people, you don't want to ride your horse like Fred Flintstone where you just patter to keep the car going. It's a modern car where you just put in cruise control. So
Yoke's noticed a few things about this pony as well, that he doesn't play with horses very long. He's generally on his own. He seems to chase the other horses away or chase them apart. He is fairly calm, not spooky, but he does have this sort of defensive kind of feel about him. So grooming, he feels he can be naggy, but if you calmly persist, he seems to like it. He seems a little bit more cooperative with groundwork now. But when you sort of push him, he can get quite defensive and he can kick the wall of the arena. So I don't know if that's on the lead or under saddle.
Yeah,
but you're sort of getting the overall impression.
Yeah, so some horses push into pressure and they're very resilient. So like another horse says, you should do this, and the horse goes, test me. And they're like a little brick wall. I watched a little Brumby here. Another horse that's bigger than him and seems bolder kind of went at him to say, no, you can't do this. And I just watched him stand and just lift his head, and he just locked up and said, you can't shift me. And the other horse didn't. The other horse shook his head and went, and then went off in his own direction. But you just watch him just instead of just going, I'm just going to move away from you and be adjustable, he just locked down and went, no. He didn't attack the other horse. He didn't do anything. He just didn't do anything. He just kind of put up his wall. And some horses are very, very resilient, very tough, and they can also be grumpy. We think because they got company, they're happy. No, they're not happy. They don't like their company. they're not that happy with that company. Maybe there's other horses in the other paddock that would be better company for them. We never quite know, and that we never have a big enough dynamic herd to give them a choice or give them the right balance to make a happy herd. So, and then in life of being around people being pushed all the time, he's just built up very strong walls of resistance. So when everyone presses him, he just builds up that wall and locks it up. And that's what's happening in the trot transition. You put pressure on, he just locks up and says no, just like he does to the other horses if he needs to. So it's in his kind of mental genetic at the moment to do that. Maybe not in his complete genetics, but it's in his mind to do that at the moment. So yeah.
Okay, some tips there, and I'd like you to give me another tip, please. This is a question that's come through from Tyler in Canada. He would like a training tip to get a horse to settle into an easy lope.
Okay, an easy lope. I always go back to, if we're going to go back to foundation and try and work on what the horse understands or doesn't understand, what it's frightened of, not frightened of. A foundation is, I always go back to the accelerator and work out how well my accelerator works, my legs. So I'd say a basic lope, not a fancy, put one leg on, move the hip over, a canter lead departure, but I'd say just squeeze off the legs and accelerate. I always go back to my lower leg and I go right through the walk transition. Can I squeeze my horse from a standstill to a fast trot and it's happy and it just pushes off nice? Can I, when I'm using my legs for forward, can I control the forward, not the horse suddenly get long forward thoughts and go, I'm worried, I'm leaving. So I see a lot of people with a rushy horse and it jumps into a canter really fast. So then they circle it and circle it and circle it and say, you can't do that. And I say, how often are you using the reins to fix that horse when it rushes? Oh, all the time, because it's always rushing. I say, but why are you using the reins to fix that horse when it rushes into canter? Oh, but to show it that it shouldn't rush. I said, yeah, but why did it rush? I said, you're wearing out the reins. I said, use the reins in American Canada, if a bear jumps out of the bushes, use the reins to steer your horse and get it out of trouble and take it away. But if the legs jump out of the bushes and squeeze it and panics your horse, don't use the reins to fix that, because that means your legs trouble your horse and your reins are trying to fix it.
Still there.
So if your legs are troubling your horse and then your reins are fixing it all the time, then your hands and your reins aren't meant to fix problems that your legs created. So you've got to go back and look at the legs and how soft your horse understands that, and how far you can direct their thoughts forward when you squeeze them, all that sort of thing. And go back to belly roping if you have to. If there's any rib cage trouble in there, that's usually the root of a too forward transition. And when I finally get to cantering, and I've done this with a lot of horses, find canter, thank you. That's it. I just want you to find the canter. Oh good, you cantered 2 strides, just gently steer off over here. Or go back to a walk and walk around, do some backups and soft things that get the horse supple and thinking again. And then let's find a canter now, thank you, that's all I want. And you might do 200 walk to canter transitions where all the horse had to do is canter for a few strides and go, that was it, until all of a sudden the horse is just stepping into canter and going, well, I don't need to rush, I don't need to. And then when the horse goes, I feel good stepping into the canter, go, would you like to canter a little further? And it goes, yeah, righto, and try that.
Super. Last question for today, Mark. It's about flying lead changes. It comes from Lottie in Denmark. She's got a horse who's nervous or afraid of a flying change, and the horse now rears quite high. Can you give a tip so that she can help her daughter work her horse through this problem?
Sounds like a flying lead change where you go to change leads and you end up flying through the air when your horse rears. But so flying lead change is when you're going from one canter lead to the other and they do a lead change like that, okay? A lot of foundation needed for a flying lead change. The last question that I just answered about how do you get a soft lope, go back to that, have a look at that. How do you get a soft lope? Can you get your horse, like I want you to think about this, can I get my horse to go from a walk to a soft canter that's just a loose rein canter and the horse is happy? Can I go from a walk and get the horse thinking left and get a left lead when I go to a soft canter? Can I walk to the right and get a nice right lead? And is the horse comfortable on either lead? Is the horse comfortable trotting a circle or a turn one way or the other? Is it always leak out one way with its thoughts? Is it thinking out one eye stronger than the other and doesn't want to be taken off that eye? Go back and see if the horse is exactly even in the reins. Left rein, can it steer left? Right rein, can it steer right? No 70% one side, 30% the other. It's equal. Is it equally soft cantering to the right, to the left? Starting the canter from from a walk? Can you do a canter transition from a standstill? Is the horse comfortable when you squeeze it into a canter? Does it hot up when you go from a walk to a canter? Find many sort of transitions in how can I find a canter? Can the horse think left, think right? You know, can it canter from a jog? Can it canter from a trot? Where is the trouble? When it's trotting fast, does it start to worry? And then go back when you've done all that and the horse follows the reins amazingly. Doesn't matter if you're walking or trotting, if you're cantering to the left or cantering to the right. Go back through all that stuff and find all the holes. You might not think there's holes, but I'll guarantee there's holes in the legs, especially when you put one leg on the other or two legs on. There's going to be trouble in the ribs. I can imagine that.
Right, because the faster the speed, the more anxiety, therefore the legs.
The more anxiety and the more trouble in the reins. There's something that's happening in the legs and the reins that's causing trouble. And when you're trying to change your rein position, when the horse is cantering this way, there's a big brace in the rein. Legs are going on. You're trying to change the arc of the horse, set the horse up for the other lead, and boom, the horse is in a bind and it's rearing. So I'd say there's a lot of rein trouble. I mean, there's so many lessons you can do. In the reins, when the horse is steering beautifully left and beautifully right, just in a basic turn, can you lift that rein up and push the wither out so the horse pushes over in the wither, but still, so say for instance you're on a left-hand turn, the horse is thinking left. If I lift that rein up and lift it up against the neck, can the horse stay with the left bend and push the wither right softly? Can I suddenly pick up the right rein, change the bend without any brace at all, at a walk, and the horse bends to the right, and can I push the wither to the left while the horse is bending to the right and just shift those shoulders from left to right? A lot of horses have a lot of glitch through that change of arc when you're changing the arc for the new direction or whatever, and they're really bracy there. So there's so many rein lessons you can do on the subscription. We've got a lot of wither moving exercises. They're really good for setting horses up for the simple change. And go back to your simple change, which is I'm going this direction at a canter, I'm coming back for a stride at the trot, and then I'm going to canter off in the other direction. Make sure your simple change is very good. It's going really good at the simple change, the change of arc. Make sure your horse can change arc, figure of eight in a trot, all those things. And as I said, as your accelerator. When you go from a walk to a gallop, or is your horse comfortable with that, or is it hot up and blow up? If it can't go from a walk to a gallop or a trot to a gallop without blowing up, then there's going to be problems in the canter, the flying change, because there's a lot in a flying change.
Fantastic. Lots in this week's podcast. I hope that's been helpful to all of you listening out there. Mark is over to Europe in 2027, so next year. So if any of you listening in Europe and this is sort of striking a chord with you and you'd like to see more, do get in touch if you'd like Mark to come and visit you. We are organising his trip, so open to suggestions at the moment for him to either come and teach or do a demonstration. It could just be in the evening for a few hours if you've got a barn and a few horses. We could work something out, so we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with more questions from Mark. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody.
The accurate insights and solutions that Mark Langley gives are at the forefront of emotive horsemanship globally. You can learn them for yourself through his supportive online membership. Check it out with a 7-day free trial. marklangley.com